I'm not in love with my husband anymore. I just don't love him anymore. I just don't feel connected to him anymore. This was a confession from a friend recently about how she felt about her marriage. And this is a common thing I hear from women my age. Just going through those motions of feeling as though they are disconnected with their husbands or partners, feeling a little bit bored, feeling like the love has dried up, and just not knowing what to do. So today I just want to address the issue of how to deal with feeling like you're falling out of love with your long-term partner or husband. This is something that's normal, is what I'd like to say first. I mean, if you're in your 40s, you've probably been married for 10 years at least, unless you got married sort of late in your 30s. But most people in their 40s, for instance, myself, I've been married, 19 years. Took some time to remember that. 19 years at the end of this year. In about 7 days' time, we'll be clocking 19 years. And that's a long time to be married to someone, okay? In that time, you will have days, maybe weeks, maybe months, when you feel like, I'm done. This is not working. I'm not in love with this person anymore. Given you will have changed in those 19 years, you're not the person you were at the time you were getting married. And your husband or partner is not the person they were when you first got married. So you have people who have evolved, two people who have evolved, two people who've changed, trying to stick together, trying to stay together till death do them part, right? But this isn't easy, right? I'm here to tell you that this is not easy. And there's been times in my marriage when I felt like I'm not in love with this person anymore, right? And I want out of this marriage, but I'm still here 20 years down the line. Unfortunately, there are some people who've thought that way, and they've gone ahead and their marriages have collapsed. So today I just want to kind of really address this real topic of what to do when you feel like you're no longer in love with the person that you're with. And this is not just for women who are aged 40 and above. Same thing can happen for men as well. And I just want to talk about some of the reasons why people can start to feel like they are not in love with this person that they've been married to. The first thing would be essentially when people get married. I know when I got married, I didn't sit down and think about, what am I looking for in a partner? What values am I looking for? So a lot of the time when we're getting married, we get married for all the wrong reasons. Sometimes we're conforming to social pressure. Sometimes we just want a person to save us from our spinsterhood, or we're getting married because our families are pushing us to do so, or we just what biological clock is ticking. I need to have my kids, and that sort of a thing. So most of us don't sit down and write our values down, write down what we are really looking for, and so we kind of rush to get married, and then once we're in the marriage, we realize, what have I done? This person is not what I wanted for myself. So a lot of the time, by the time we realize those things, we're already in the marriage. And so we decide, okay, let's just make this work. Okay, let's do the best that we can. And so you find that for many people, as I mentioned in one of my previous posts, that when we get to our 40s, a lot of the time we want to be authentic, right, as women. And so you're going through this period of navigating who you are, trying to find your authentic self. And that authentic self that you are might be not the person that you were when you first got married. At that time, maybe we're not operating from that place of authenticity, right? And suddenly now that mask is off, and this is who you are, and you've already made this decision. You've married this person, you've got children together, and then you wake up and think, you know what? We're so different, right? And so those feelings can then start to come in, where you're thinking, I don't love this person anymore. I don't feel connected to them. So the first thing is to recognize that. I think you're not the same person that you were when you married this person. They're not the person that they were. That both of you have grown, that both of you have evolved. What can you do to still find those, common grounds between the two of you? So I think the important thing is to be honest with yourself and be honest with your husband or your partner in terms of how you're feeling. The two of you can then sit down and talk about, okay, what can we do to feel more connected? What can we do to address this thing? Just because the love is fizzling away and you feel like you're not in love with them doesn't mean that there's no hope for the relationship. I think it just allows for you to have that conversation around what do we need to do, right? What growth needs to happen. The other thing also I want to just talk about is in terms of, I think I've talked about the values, where sometimes the values aren't aligned, and then you realize later on that the values weren't aligned in the first place. And that's where a lot of couples can then decide, okay, this is not working, let's go apart. But I also am a strong believer in change and growth, right? Values can change. If certain values when I was younger didn't matter, now they matter. I can start to work on developing, myself in those areas. So when the two of you are getting to the place where you don't feel aligned, you can sit down and talk about, okay, how can we be more aligned? How can we work towards the common goal? And also there's the whole thing of growth, right? Sometimes you find that a woman is growing, right? Within her life, she's evolving, she's becoming a better version of herself. And sometimes you can find that the partner might not be growing, okay? And so there's that expectation of, why aren't you growing? So you find that there's now a separation that's happening between the couple. The wife is growing, the husband is stagnant, or it could be the other way around, where the man is growing and the woman is stagnant. I think one of the things that helps for couples to build a solid relationship is to ensure that they're both growing, right? Both growing. So find ways in which you can both grow. If you're remaining the same person that you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago when you first got married, and there's no growth, that's a big problem. Okay, you should all of us should be evaluating ourselves on an ongoing basis. Every 6 months, how have I grown as a person? Every year, how have I grown as a person? Some people are so stuck in who they are. They're these fixed mindsets where they think this is who I am, right? I'm not affectionate. I'm not good at communication and whatever. And so you're talking to women who are married to this man who's never changed, right? He's not affectionate. He doesn't want to change. He's not willing to learn anything new. And so you find the woman starts to feel, I've outgrown this relationship. And you find that a lot of us can feel that we've outgrown this person. And that's where you start getting that thing of we're not on the same page, right? And how can you avoid that is to ensure that you're both growing. And this is a message for men as well. So men, I think you need to kind of be growing together. Okay. If you're not growing together, then that there's that rift that's growing between the two of you. Sit down and communicate. Okay. What's changed for you as a woman? What's not working for you as a woman? What would you like to see more in your partner? And if you're the husband who your wife is communicating to, you're very lucky that you have a woman who's communicating, because sometimes women won't communicate and they'll act up. She'll walk away or she'll whatever. But if you've got a woman who's saying, let's have a chat, let's sit down, these are the problems that I'm having, then you're very fortunate, because the two of you can then talk about how can we grow together as a couple. There has to be individual growth. I think that both of you, husband and wife, or, two partners in a marriage, should be investing in personal growth, right? Read books, attend marriage seminars, listen to podcasts, whatever. Invest in your personal growth. Choose to become a better person each day. Okay. Why would you choose to be, mediocre if you can be better, right? So invest in personal growth, but also invest in growth together as a couple. Spend time together in communication, like communicate deeply in terms of what your real needs are. And a lot of the time when you're finding that a woman is saying I'm not in love, is because there's a disconnect. They feel like there's no communication. They're communicating to their husband, their partner. They feel like their needs are not being understood. Their needs are not being met. They're met with deflection. They're met with denial. They're not validated. And so it can really feel like it's there's a war between these two people. But when people learn to communicate, learn to understand each other, learn to work on being on the same page, I think what you will find is that there's less of a chance that you're going to start feeling like you're disconnected and out of love with this person. And the final thing to say is that love is not a feeling. I know most of us want to feel in love, right? Want to feel in love. And so when that feeling goes, when the butterflies have gone, then there's still something there that can be worked on. So they say love is it's an action word. It's not a noun. Right? It's not just the butterfly feelings. That may be important when you first fall in love, but that's not what's going to sustain a marriage. A marriage is sustained by making the decision to stay and work on the marriage through effective communication and listening and understanding each other.